Hello everyone. Today we are going to discuss about Python application programming concepts, objects and values. Let us start with objects and values. If we execute these assignment statements, that is A is equal to a string and B is equal to a string. So we know that both A and B refer to a string. Maybe here it is same, correct? So one string object, and here both A and B refer to it. Okay, I have one string object called banana where it is referring to two variables, that is A and B. Okay, so there are two possible states now. That means I have A referring to one string called banana, okay, and B is referring to the same string called banana. Fine. Otherwise, you can write the variables and objects in such a way that A and B both are referring to a string called banana. Now, in one case, A and B refer to two different objects. Okay, this is the case one where this A and B is referring to two different objects. In the second case, they are referring to the same object. So to check whether these two variables refer to the same object, we can make use of is operator. So you can see that here A is B. So is, again here it is acting like a Boolean operator. So this Boolean operator is going to return the true or false value. And you are checking A is B. So in this example, if A is B, it is going to return the true value. Since A is also same string and B is also referring to the same string object. Now, here Python only created one string object and both that A and B are referring to those particular string values. But when you create two lists, you get two objects. That means I have two lists. Okay. So you are going to create how many objects now? You are creating two objects. So if note, if the two objects are identical, they are also equivalent. But if they are equivalent, they are not necessarily be identical. Okay. So let me talk about that case. Okay. Now here, if I tell that A is equal to a list of 1, 2, 3 and B is equal to a list of 1, 2, 3. So both are different and we say that the two lists are equivalent because they have the same elements but not identical because they are not the same object. Okay, so they are the different objects. If both the objects are identical and they are also equivalent, okay, but if they are equivalent, they are not necessarily be identical. Okay, so whenever I try to execute like A is B, it will definitely return as a false value. Okay, so until now we have seen using the object and value interchangeably, but it is more precise to say that object has a value. Okay, it has a value. Say that if I execute A is equal to 1, 2, 3. Okay, it is referring or A is referring to a list object whose values are nothing but a particular sequence of elements. Okay, so if another list has the same element, we would say that it has the same value. Okay, so they are said to be equivalent. Now let us discuss about aliasing concept. Here, if at all A is an variable, if it is referring to an object and you assign B is equal to A, then both the variables refer to the same object. Okay, that means here it's a reference of one variable to another variable. So consider that I have A is equal to 1, 2, 3. It is a list And if I assign B is equal to A, then definitely your content and your value is also identical, your object is also pointing to the same. Okay, so if you use this B is A, it will return the true value. I hope you got the difference of aliasing and the previously whatever we discussed. Here the association of a variable with an object is called a reference. The reference is nothing but A comma B. Now, an object with more than one reference has more than one name. That is why we call that object is aliased. Okay, since because you are giving one reference which has more than one name. Okay, you are referring, say for example, I have 1, 2, 3. It's a list. Okay, this reference you are giving it to A also, B also. Correct? So, that is why the objects are said to be aliased. Now, there is one of the characteristics of aliased object. It is mutable. That means any changes you make in one, okay, the alias, it is going to affect the other. Say for example, I have made some changes in B of 0. So B of 0, you have changed it to 17. Okay, so when you try to print A value, then the first variable, the indexed variable of 0th position will be changed as 17. That means you have changed B of 0, but it is reflected in A of 0 also. So the aliased objects are considered to be the mutable object. Okay, and we also have something called as immutable. For immutable objects, like we can talk about the strings. Okay, so in that case aliasing is not much a problem. Say that we have something called as A is equal to banana, and we have one more variable B, it is equal to banana. Okay, so it almost, I think it is not going to make any difference whether A and B refer to the same string or not. Okay, now let us talk about list as arguments. When you pass a list to a function, then the function is, it's getting, or it gets a reference to the list. Okay, say that you have defined a function. Okay, so that function is delete the head of t, and in the statement comprises of delete t of 0. That means the first element of that variable t or the list t should be deleted. Okay, so this is the function. Now, whenever I try to apply this function in my program, where I have defined the variable letters with a list, and I try to call that function delete of head to the variable called letters, and if I try to print the letter, definitely this will be applied here. So the first element, that is A, is removed. Okay, so we can make use of the list as arguments also. Now the parameter here t, which we are pointing, and the variable letters. Okay, so they are aliased. So t is pointing to the variable called letters. So it is aliasing, means it is referring to the same object. It is A, B, C. That is a list, right? So it is important also to distinguish between the operations, okay, that tries to manipulate or modify the lists, okay, and some of the operations that create a new list. Say for example, consider the list operations. Okay, we have one of the operation called append. So this append, it tries to modify the list. Okay, if at all I make use of this plus sign, okay, this is going to create a new list. So now consider that example for append. I have a variable t1 is equal to a list. Now, if I want to append the content of T1 to T2, okay, or if I want to append T1 with an additional value and assign it to a new variable, okay, so what we are going to do here, we are considering T1 dot append of 3. That means T1 is appended with 1, 2, 3. Okay. And you are taking that or assigning it to a variable called T2. Now, when I try to print T1, okay, definitely you are going to get 1, 2, 3. At the same time, if you print T2, because you are not appending it, you are just aliasing, you are just considering a new variable assignment for the T1 dot append. Okay, so T1 will return a none value. Sorry, T2 will return a none value. At the same time, T1 will append with the new value called 3. Now consider I have one more operation, that is the plus sign. Okay, and we know that the plus sign is used to create a new list. Now when I make use of the plus operand, say for example T3. T3 is a one more variable and I am trying to create a new list for T3. Here T2 does not contain any list. But in case you want to create a new list, you have to use this plus operator. So what you are going to do, you are taking T1 plus the new value, that is 3. Then if you print T3, it is taking up the values of T1 and also the value which has been added. Okay. So your T3 value comprises of 1, 2, 3. Now if you compare whether your T2 and T3 are same, definitely it is going to return a false value because your T2 will not return any value here, but T3 will return a value because the plus operand operator is going to create a new list, but here the append operator is not going to create a new list. Okay, so that is a major difference. And if at all you want to make use of delete, okay, suppose okay, let me consider the same example. The difference what we are talking here is when you write functions that are supposed to be modify lists. Okay, say for example, this function does not delete. Okay, does not delete the head of a list. Fine. Let me talk about this. See, I am going to write a function that creates and returns a new list. For example, tail. Tail is a function. It is returning all the values but the first element of a list. Okay. So here when I try to get the values of t, okay, it is returning all other values but not the first element. Okay, so when I try to use it, okay, that is letters is equal to a list and you are taking up one more variable, rest is equal to tail of letters. In that, tail is a function. The tail function should return those values apart from the first. Correct? So print rest means apart from the first, the remaining letters will be printed. Okay. And it is also basically important for us to write functions which are supposed to modify the list. Okay. And you can see these examples also. You are defining a function that is does not delete the head of a list. Okay, so bad delete head of t, and the statement here we are talking is t is equal to t of 1 colon. So the slice operator, it is going to create a new list and assignment is referred to it is making the assignment t to refer it. Okay, so it does, I mean, but none of the values are being like now again assigned to the t variable because t is referring to the variable of a function and you cannot assign those, so it has no effect on the list which is passed as an argument already. Okay, So definitely this is going to give a wrong statement or an what we can call it as wrong assignment. Okay, so the slice operator here, in case if you are using, it will create a new list, and assignment makes t refer to it. So but what happens, none of it has an effect on the list when it is passed as an argument. But you can alternatively, you can write a function to create and return a new list. So what you can do is you can define um tail. Okay, let me consider here only. You can define a tail function. Okay, then you return a new list. Fine. So here the example tail, it is going to return all, but the first element is omitted. Okay. um, Let us now discuss about dictionaries. Dictionaries are almost like a list, and here in a list, if we try to consider the index positions, it has to be the integers. But in case of dictionary, indices, what we consider, it can also be any type. Okay, almost any type of the index that can make use. That is the only difference that you see between dictionaries and lists. Now you can think of dictionary is mapping between a set of indices which are called as keys. Okay, so set of indices which are called as keys and to the values. Okay, so the key, we consider it to be a key value pair. Now each key maps to a specific value. Now when we talk about the association of key and a value, it is called as key value pair, or you can also call it as an item. Here, if we try to consider as an example, we will build a dictionary that maps from English to Spanish words, so that the keys and the values are all nothing but the strings. Okay, so the keys and the values both are considered to be the strings. Consider as an example that we are mapping the English words to Spanish words. So when you are mapping, we have taken few examples. One is mapped to uno in Spanish. Two is mapped to dos in Spanish. Three is mapped to tres. Now we have taken up an English to Spanish variable and listed few conversion translations. Okay, so now for this, how to create a dictionary? In order to create the function dict, okay, that is the one which creates a new dictionary with no items. So you can see that you have a function called dict. Okay, so it is going to create a new dictionary with no items, and we have the curly braces that represents an empty dictionary. Uh, the curly braces, you can write like this. Okay, so if at all you are representing an empty dictionary, you can make use of curly braces. Okay, and if at all you want to add items to the dictionary, then you can use square brackets. So you can see that you want to create a new dictionary, then you can use this variable is equal to dict. Okay, where you are creating a new dictionary. In case if you are using the flower braces, then you can think it is an empty dictionary. And if at all you want to add items to the dictionary, then you can use the square brackets. Okay, where you are adding that 1 is equal to uno. That means you are adding the value to that particular key. Similarly, you can do it. So when you print that variable, you can see that one key is assigned to value. So 3 is assigned to tres and 2 is assigned to dos, right? So you can also see that there is the key value pair with the colon between the key and the value, whatever is being printed, it is not in a proper order, okay, but it is displaying all the 3 items in the dictionary, and you can create a new dictionary with these 3 items. As we know that in the dictionary, we can also make use of all those operators uh, like how we used for lists. We can also use it for dictionaries. Okay, so we will talk about what are those operators or operations that you can do over dictionaries. Consider um, as an example here, I could tell you that I have a variable with the dictionaries value. Now I want to find the key in the dictionary. So key, you can make use of in operator. Definitely we know that in operator is a Boolean operator which is going to return either true or false value, right? It is going to check the key 1 in this variable eng to span, that is sp. Yes, 1 is a key value, it is going to return true. But is not a key. It is a value assigned to the key called 1. So this is called key value pair. When you check for in eng to sp variable, definitely it is going to return a false value. Okay. And if the key is not there in the dictionary, you get an error. Okay, and to find the value, okay, sometimes you want to find a value in the dictionary, I can make use of a method called values. Okay, say that here it is not clearly displayed, I'll write it. So vals is equal to list of English to Spanish of values. Okay, so what is happening here? Basically, when you are writing this, so English to Spanish is going to get the values in a dictionary, okay, and it is creating a list of those values. And if you try to check whether uno in vals, okay, since your vals comprises of only the values, not the keys, right? So if you are going to list it, you will get uno space dos space tres, right? So when you check using in operator, in vals, definitely it is going to return a true value. Okay, since in is an Boolean operator which results either true or false. And to see whether um, something appears as a value in the dictionary, you can use this method called values.